we've got a few more signings to dive into.
This offense continues to evolve as the season goes on.
Welcome into Bucs Insider, presented by Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Brianna Dix, and we got an interesting game coming up here. We got some interesting injury news, which we had thought originally we weren't going to finally lead the show with injury news. We thought, it's kind of the same. Well, it's not the same this week, so we'll get to that in a second. But for now, it also meant there's been a flurry of roster moves for different reasons this week.
Yeah, well, first of all, rookie running back Josh Williams was placed on the reserve suspended list. We really didn't go into details as to why, but Todd Bowles mentioned working with a trainer, so it probably had something to do with substances he wasn't supposed to have in his body. But Todd says he's a good kid, so it was probably an honest mistake. We then made some changes on the practice squad. Desmond Watson out, and an outside linebacker named Benton Whitley is in to the practice squad. All of that alone leaves us with one open spot on the active roster, so there's probably a move or two still to come, but that's what we got right now.
And then injury news, finally. Feels like we've got some positive news after weeks of it more being about who all was out.
So both Bucky Irving and Chris Godwin were limited participants on Wednesday, but extremely exciting to see them back on the field. And then Hassan Reddick and Ben Bredesen did not participate in practice on Wednesday.
I think the takeaway is that there's only seven names on there.
Yeah,
remember, pretty recently it was 18.
18 names.
I typed more names for the opposing team. That was probably the first time this season
that's ever happened.
And notably, Baker Mayfield is not on the injury report. He's probably still
dealing
with some aches and pains.
Not 100%.
He's clearly doing better.
And and I imagine nobody's 100% at this point in the season, which is how that goes. All right, let's talk a little bit about this Patriots game, not the outcome that we hoped for, but definitely some interesting takeaways with it. Bree, what stood out to you?
For me, it was Cade Otton. So he tied his career high in catches with 9, and then he had the second most receiving yards in a game in his career with 82. But really, I don't think you can say enough about what he brings to the offense, just his route running ability, those hitches, the option routes where he can take an inside-outside release, but also his ability in the run game blocking created a lot of those sift blocks for Sean Tucker to gain yardage. And then also I loved the point that both Tez Johnson and Sterling Shepard made on the Player Table show, but they said that he doesn't wear gloves, which is very unusual for a receiver to grip the football, but also just they said that ability in blocking and getting the pad level and how difficult that is, but what a game he had.
I was just thinking, this just occurred to me, if that one big gain hadn't been wiped out by the offensive pass interference, he would have been over 100 yards for just the second time in his career. That was a rough one, that penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the play, and I think that play gets flagged 100 times out of 100, but you can also tell that he didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
It was just an accident. They ran into each other.
Yep, which is such a bummer. I wanted to talk about Tez Johnson because I've just been so impressed with the way he's stepped up. He now has at least 40 receiving yards in 5 straight games, tied for the longest such streak by a rookie in the NFL this season, and among wide receivers with at least 30 targets. His 129.9 passer rating when targeted ranks 7th in the NFL this season, and that's not among rookies, that's among all wide receivers.
Nice.
I just think that it's been really great to see the way that he has stepped up. That was the question we all asked when Mike and Chris were going to be out. Who's going to step up? And and now, of course, we also love the flips. I always want him to score now because I want to see the flips. I think it's been really great to see the way that, again, 7th round pick, I think we forget that. 7th round picks are definitely not locks to make the team, much less to have his first multiple touchdown game of his career.
I'll give you another number for Tez, 83. That was the percentage of the offensive snaps that he played in this last game.
That's a lot.
We're talking about a guy, I think you used this number before. Didn't he have 1 catch in his first 4 games? In one of those first 4 weeks, I think week 2, he was a healthy scratch just because he really wasn't in the game plan, and we had plenty of receivers. The fact that he's now not just throw him in there every now and then, give him an end around, a gadget player kind of guy, but an actual almost every down starter is a pretty stunning rise for a 7th rounder who a lot of teams obviously thought was too small to play in the NFL.
Yes, and off that note, I think I have a perfect clip from when he and Sterling Shepard were on the Players Table with me this Monday, which
I heard was
shameless plug. Yeah, if you've not watched it.
I heard it's hilarious.
They're hilarious. I feel like I could have gone for 3 hours with the two of them. And, you talked about just the percent of the snaps that he plays, and he definitely has that young player energy about him where he could play all the snaps and every single one just be a go route and be completely fine. And I just wanted to assess how incredible it is what he's able to do physically, the flips, all of it, on an interesting food choice.
That's another thing. We just addressed this yesterday. He has a full-blown meal at halftime, and one of them is hot Cheetos. That's kid behavior.
That's serious.
You know what I mean?
Hot Cheetos. I eat like hot Cheetos, a hot dog, and if they got donuts back there, I go grab a donut.
I'm not there. I used to be there. Just wait till you get 30. That's why I tell them, just wait, because I was in your position at one time, and Victor Cruz and them were telling me the same thing I'm telling you now, and I wasn't listening.
Tez, what does Shep do that is old man?
I already know what he's about to say.
What you think about to say? You do a lot of stuff that's old man.
He can't narrow it down.
You do a lot of stuff that's old man.
All right, give me one then.
Grunt when you stand up. That right there gets you. He put a lot of icy hot on before practice. You got to warm up everything.
That's the one I thought he was going to say. Because I make this mixture. I call it hot sauce.
No, it ain't. He put muscle relaxer, tiger bomb, and atomic bomb in a cup.
Hey, I got to have
and he rub it on his abs, back, glutes.
Everything, like
everything.
lotion.
Yeah, so obviously hilarious.
I guess I'm old.
Yeah,
that happens to me.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes grunt when I get up. I definitely can't eat what Tez eats at halftime.
Where does he get a fully dressed hot dog in
Yes,
in
I
the
know.
locker room?
I don't know. And maybe donuts occasionally. He talked. I'm like this. I
guess
know
those are in the coaches.
who's his supplier. I gotta know. All right. So now we also wanted to, of course, talk about some other positive injury news.
Yeah, I mean,
recently.
there's not a whole lot to say, but Luke Gedeke came back off the injured reserve. It didn't look like that was going to happen at the beginning of last week, but he got considerably better over the course of the week. I know he made a big difference out there. The running game was good. He brought a new, that intensity to the line that they need. They fed off that for a long time, and it was back. But, the injury list giveth and the injury list taketh away because Ben Bredeson left that game with a hamstring injury, and it looks like he'll be out this week.
All right, well, we are going to take a quick break. We have more looking back at that Patriots game and looking ahead to the Bills game after this. Welcome back into Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Bree Dix. So we're continuing to look at the defensive side of things now, looking back at that Patriots game. I wanted to highlight Elijah Roberts, and not just because he's the SMU guy, and shout out to my dad's alumni. We had to shout him out for that. But he got a pass deflection that forced a punt, and that was his third pass defensed of the season, which is tied for the most in the NFL among rookie defensive linemen.
All right.
Got his second sack of the season, which is tied for the second most by a rookie this year. And it's just so cool to me that he's playing at such a high level when he's technically sort of had to switch positions from the way he was used in college in a lot of ways, of a little bit more edge versus now true kind of defensive lineman. And he's talked about the ways he's had to adjust a little bit. And of course, Todd Bowles' defense, not an easy one to learn as a rookie. And so I wanted to also play a clip that I asked Todd Bowles about him on our show this week, and he had some really great things to say.
Defensive line played well, especially Roberts. I thought Roberts did a very good job yesterday. He could actually get off blocks and get to the quarterback and got some quarterback hits. Really been coming on for us. He has a knack for getting off blocks and understanding he can throw body weight and then go back the other way. He's one of the few guys we have down there that can do that. Vea can do it with strength. He can do it with athleticism as well as strength. So that makes him very dangerous in the passing game, and he's gotten very good in the run game. He was taking on double teams. He was piling up the holes. I mean, he did a very good job. I thought it was his best game to date.
Yeah, so just great to see a young guy like him who, again, not a super early round draft pick, contributing in some really major ways and really helping with, losing Kalijah Kancey, and even though they're not exactly the same player or position even, but it's been a really big boost to that defense.
There was a lot of very prominent interior defensive linemen taken in this last draft. There was a ton of them early on, and so for the Bucs to get a really good one in the 5th round is awesome.
Yeah, and there was another defensive lineman that was putting up some interesting numbers this last week.
Yeah, well, he's one of them. Vea had 7 quarterback pressures, which is his high for the season. And Vea and Diaby, who actually is, I didn't realize this until I was looking on Next Gen Stats earlier this week, but he's about 10th in the league in quarterback pressures. So you look at the sacks and you go, well, 4, it doesn't blow you away. But he had 4 pressures off of Will Campbell, the rookie offensive tackle. But then you look at it and you go, I know pressures are important and can be as impactful sometimes as sacks, but not always. And Drake May was getting off some nice passes with pressure right in his face. And I think I turned to Bree at one point in the third quarter, you may remember, and said, if we don't start getting some sacks of Drake May, we're going to have a hard time pulling this one out. And we just didn't get him down. The Elijah Roberts sack was the only one, and it was for 1 yard. And I really think that they came in having given up 34 sacks of him, which was second most to Cam Ward in the NFL. And it was really the only thing going wrong with their offense. So I'm like, if we got to get that, or we're going to have our time slowing them down. And they might not have got to some of those big plays that lost us the game if we had been able to get a sack earlier in the drive. So
it's very true.
I think that was the real Achilles heel for us in that game.
That's true. And it did look like even with some things not going right, there was still a chance that came down at the end. And one of our defensive guys made a really big play that looked like it was going to set us up for the chance for one of those incredible game-winning comebacks.
Well, Tykee Smith had an incredible diving interception in the end zone, picked off Drake May. It was his first interception of the season. And it's funny, I think we talk about either Tykee Smith or Antoine Winfield Jr. every week, but for good reason. Tykee Smith leads all defensive backs and tackles with 74. But, I mean, you already had such a versatile, interchangeable safety in Antoine Winfield, and then you're pairing another one with Tykee Smith that can do it all. He can cover, he defends the run, he can blitz, he can play that kind of single high safety role, he can play in the box, he triggers quickly. But to be able to utilize both of them in a variety of ways in Todd Bowles' system that disguises a lot of looks, it constantly keeps offenses guessing.
You know what I was just thinking about? I kind of think parallel to Luke Edeke, in which we have drafted a guy and then used him at first in a different position because that's what we thought he'd be best at, and then put him back in their college spot and they really thrive. And I think it's a good job by our coaching staff to be willing to adapt and say, okay, maybe that wasn't his best role. Let's try him here. And then you end up with a burgeoning star at safety.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just about even injuries, right? Of for Tykee, that I don't even know if it was more on what they thought he'd be best at is almost a necessity because Antoine missed a lot of time and last year, and it just did a bunch of interesting things to the defense. But yeah, I think you're completely right, and why they value versatility of a guy that they know
especially
can
in the
do
secondary.
A lot of different things. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back to look ahead at that Bills game when we come back. Welcome back into Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith, and Bree Dix here to now look ahead to that Bills matchup, and it's a big one. We know the Bills have been a team that have been perennially successful for quite a while now, and in large part thanks to one particular person.
Yes, and that is Josh Allen, and of course one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the league. He has 7 rushing touchdowns, which is 5th in the NFL. He did commit a couple of turnovers against the Dolphins. They had really struggled in that game. But Josh Allen is just an absolute freak athlete. He can beat you in so many different ways, and defenses have to defend essentially 2 plays because you have the scramble, then you have the throw, and he's a guy that has a rocket for an arm. He can make 60-yard bombs over the body, feet, reset, but also just as a runner, he can power through you, he can jump over you, he can stiff arm, he can juke, and really is just really elusive on the move. So obviously for containing gaps, not over pursuit, to leave that lane open for Josh Allen is going to be huge on Sunday.
Yeah, we faced a few of those this year.
Yeah.
The elusive guys. And so Buffalo is first in the NFL in rushing. And part of it is because of Josh Allen, what he's able to do. That would be enough. But then they also have James Cook. And I'm like, yes, this makes sense why they would lead the NFL in rushing between these 2 people. So James Cook is already just 80 yards shy of a 1,000-yard rushing season. And we've only played 9 games, which is crazy. He has a 5.5 yards per carry, which is great. And he's only 0.2 yards per carry shy of his career best season average in that area. And the interesting thing is, though, he only averages around 2 targets a game. So we've talked this year about how the Bucs' run defense has been pretty incredible, but they have sometimes struggled if it is people like a Christian McCaffrey or these backs who also tend to do a lot of receiving out in space. So I'm actually thinking that this could be an interesting matchup of knowing that our run defense has been pretty good this year. Are you able to do both, stopping him kind of especially up the middle and those kind of power runs, and also contain Josh Allen? The run game is not just focused on your running backs the way it would normally be. But yeah, he's a pretty talented guy. And Todd Bowles, actually, I asked him about James Cook earlier this week, and he definitely had some praise for him.
He makes the first guy miss. Very quick, very fast, very tough. You look up and we're not in our gaps and he's going down the field. We're not going to catch this guy. He's a very good football player. Admire him a lot. Reminds me a lot of Bucky. very good straight line speed. He's more like a Jahmyr Gibbs type of guy, and he's very explosive.
Yes, Coach definitely singing his praises, knowing that's going to be a tough matchup. And we both took offensive people to talk about, so we figured we'd defer to you to look at the Bills' defense and what we have facing there.
First of all, James Cook, he's averaging 102.3 yards per game, which he was already one of the better running backs in the league. But if you look at his last 2 years, he was averaging like 63 yards per game. So he's taken his game up a couple levels.
Yeah.
But yeah, on defense, one thing that has really worked out for them well was the signing of Joey Bosa. And they paired him with Greg Rousseau, who they re-signed. They did a lot of work this offseason re-signing some of their key players, and Rousseau was one of them. But they brought in Joey Bosa, who really, towards the end of his Charger career, was all about the story was he kept getting injured. So his production had dropped quite a bit, but he's been playing great and playing a lot of snaps for the Bills. He does lead them with 4.0 sacks. Greg Rousseau is 3.0, and they really need that pressure off the edge because their interior defensive line has really been hit hard by injuries. Most recently, their best guy in there, Ed Oliver, was put on injured reserve. He won't be playing here. They played most of the season without their second-round pick, defensive tackle J.T. Sanders. He actually might return from injured reserve this week. He's been practicing fully, so they could get him back. But they've had at least 3 defensive tackles on the injured reserve for most of the season, and I think that probably is reflected in those troublesome run defense numbers. But yeah, the Joey Bosa addition has really worked out well, and he's been a great pairing with Greg Rousseau.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right, we have one more segment coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Bucs Insider. Welcome back to Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith, Bree Dix. It's time for our final segment where we talk about things like stats, fantasy news, all of our miscellaneous ideas and
cool
numbers here.
Popular
cool,
numbers.
Popular, amazing numbers.
In-crowd numbers.
Here's what I'll say. This first one is going to make you very popular with people, popular with fantasy people. You're so proud. Look at his little smile.
Well,
so proud.
We kind of mix it up in this last segment. We don't always talk fantasy, but I kind of insisted that we do fantasy this week because I wanted to pat myself on the back for last week's advice, which was I would be leery of starting Rachaad White because Sean Tucker is eating into his carries, and sure enough, that happened. And then I said you could absolutely feel comfortable picking up, or if you already had him, starting Cade Otton, and we saw how that went.
Good call.
I think you can keep playing Cade Otton for a while now, at least until Chris Godwin is back. So
especially now that Luke is back, I just feel like in general they
don't have to keep him in as much. And but as for this week, my question was, should you consider picking up Sean Tucker and or Tez Johnson? We're still available in a lot of leagues. I'd feel comfortable having Tez on my roster, and if I needed to play him, because like last week there were a lot of teams on buys. I mean, he would have been a great play last week.
Great play this last week.
You can't count on 2 touchdowns, but like you said earlier, he's got 5 straight games with at least 4 catches, and he's finding the end zone pretty regularly. Obviously, he's good at the scramble drill. I'm not saying I'd start him over T. Higgins or something like that, but as for Sean Tucker, maybe not every week, but I would probably start him this week because they're playing that Bills defense, and I think he's clearly getting around 50% of the handoffs at this point.
Interesting.
And he's got a lot of, and not this last game, but in recent games, he's had a lot of carries around the goal line.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point. All right, so now, we also figured at this point in the season that it's really good to kind of take an assessment of the playoff picture, just to know where we are, and especially, it's always funny, after a loss, it can feel a little bit like the sky is falling, and to assess the playoff picture can be a good way to do a bit of a reality check of what is our record actually at this point, and where does that make us stand? So what have we seen, especially in the NFC at this point, of where everybody stands? Well,
the sky isn't falling. Synopsis would be the Buccaneers are still just 1 game off the best record in the NFC, and that can change really quickly. And we have a Rams-Seahawks showdown and a Lions-Eagles showdown this week, so there's going to be some shuffling going on there. Obviously, the Bucs are still a game and a half up in their division, but everything is still right there in front of the team in terms of what they want to accomplish. So you can see it's a pretty crowded top of the picture there.
Yeah, and especially shows how important that game against the Rams in a couple weeks is going to be.
Now, I think you probably this week want to root for Seattle because against the Rams, because we do already have that tiebreaker against Seattle. We might end up with one against the Rams, but we don't know yet. We can't guarantee it.
So, hey, Bucs fans, we're all Seahawks fans.
Seahawks fans this week. I don't know about Lions Eagles. Is a little tougher to figure out because we lost to both of those teams. But if you're thinking big picture, shooting for the moon, you still want to try to get that first overall seed, and they're only one game off of it right now, so you probably want the Eagles to get knocked back a bit, and the vibes around that team are kind of shaky right now anyway, so if they could kind of go into a tailspin, that'd be cool.
Yeah, we got some important games coming up. That playoff picture is starting to be even closer at the top, so plenty to watch there. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We hope you guys enjoyed that Bills game this week, and that's going to do it for us here on Buccaneers Insider. We'll see you next time.